So now that you've determined your topic, you've collected your research, you're ready to work on developing your speech. And basically, there are three parts of a speech. You have your introduction, your body, and your conclusion of your speech. And within each of these parts of a speech, there are certain elements that should be included. So let's start with the elements of the introduction. In the introduction, we want an attention getter. This is a statement that attracts the attention of the audience and gets them interested in listening to you. After we have completed the attention getter, we want to reveal what our topic is to our audience if we haven't already done so in the attention getter. And then we want the audience to understand why this topic is important to them. So why should they listen to your speech? You want to connect to them why they should be interested in any topic. Then you want to go in and talk about why you are the person that they should listen to about this topic. So that's speaker credibility. So third, we're going to give our speaker credibility and say what our credentials are on this topic. Fourth, we're going to talk about our thesis, which is the main statement that we're talking about, what we're going to say in the speech. This thesis is not the same as our specific purpose, but it does go back to our specific purpose and should align with our specific purpose. Then we're going to give a preview of our main points. The preview of main points can be included as part of our thesis if we want, or it can be a separate statement. But what the preview of main points should do is it should be aligned with each of the main points of our speech. So if we have two main points in our speech, our preview should have two main points, and they should be the same as the main points in the body of our speech. So let's talk a little bit about how to use attention getters. I could clap my hands for you, and that might get your attention. But if it doesn't have anything to do with my speech, it's not really an effective attention getter. So the first thing that you should know about attention getters is they should relate to the topic of your speech. The second thing is it should be the first words out of your mouth. You shouldn't say anything else before you give your attention getter. You shouldn't say, my topic is, you should not say, today I'm going to talk about. You should go right into the attention getter for your speech. So, what are different types of attention getters? The most popular that I hear with student speeches are to ask a question. These are kind of mundane. It's okay to use these, but it's not the best type of attention getter. The one thing that you need to do is if you ask a question that has an actual answer, such as how many of you, you should pause and recognize your audience, whatever the answer is. You could refer to recent happenings that are really relevant to your audience. You could use humor, but when you use humor, you need to make sure that you are not offensive to anyone. You could stress the importance of the topic to the audience, how it's going to impact us in the future. You could use some type of extreme visual aid. So for example, if you were talking about puppy mills, you could actually start your presentation by showing a picture of the puppies in the puppy mill conditions. That would get the attention of your audience. You could also use a famous quotation by a famous person. You could also cite a little known fact or statistic or a startling statistic. And then finally, you could use a short story or dramatic or a humorous story about your topic. Just remember that always, 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 when you're gaining attention, it needs to relate to the topic that you're going to speak about. Now, let's talk a little bit more about your topic reveal, or basically what is your speaker audience topic connection. You want to reveal your topic pretty much after the attention getter so that people start to get a clear idea of what you're going to talk about. Then you want to reveal why the audience should care about it. So why should the audience want to learn anything about your topic? So if I'm talking about global warming, they should want to learn about it because it may impact their children's lives, it may impact the quality of our water, it may cause floods. There's all kinds of things where global warming may impact my audience. But I want to make sure pretty much as soon as I reveal the topic, I have revealed to them why they should care about this topic. you should always have a link between your attention getter and your topic. I think I've nailed that home a little bit. So now that your audience knows why they should want to hear about your topic, you need to explain why they should want to hear about it from you. And that's your credibility. So this is why should they trust you to discuss the topic. So when you give your credibility, you should be talking about any experience you have with the topic, any personal stories you have, any research you've done on the topic. Obviously, at this point in your life, you're not an expert on a ton of things, so a lot of it will be research that you've done, but if you have personal experience, you should talk about it. So, example, if you were giving a speech on the causes of lung cancer and your parent or your grandparent has had lung cancer, then that's something you would include as part of your credibility. You've experienced it firsthand. So now that you've gotten the attention of your audience, you've told them why they should want to listen to information about your topic, and you've told them what your credibility is in speaking on the topic. It's time to give them the major idea of your speech. And so that's the thesis. And you've done theses a lot in working with English papers. And basically the thesis is just the major idea of the speech. So for in our speech, if we were doing the causes of global warming, my thesis is going to be, today I'm going to talk to you about the 3 major causes of global warming. That's my thesis. Notice it's a complete sentence. It doesn't have figurative language, and it's a statement, not a question. It could also contain my 3 main points or my preview, which I'll talk about in the next step, and I'll give you some examples of that. So our preview is just simply what are the main points of our speech. So in our global warming speech, our 3 main points are going to be the causes, and the causes that I'm going to have in my speech are greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrialization. So when I do my preview of main points, I might say something like, specifically, I'm going to talk about greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrialization. If I wanted to include it with my thesis, I could say, today I'm going to talk about the 3 major causes of global warming: greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrialization. So it can be part of that thesis statement if I want it to be. And this is going to be the last statement that you make before you go into the body of your speech. A couple of things not to do, and I see students do this a lot. Instead of starting with their attention getter, they say, my informative speech is, today I'm going to talk about, I'm so nervous, etc., etc., etc. I want you to do none of that. I want you to start with your attention getter for your speech. So now that we've completed the introduction of our speech, we're going to talk about the elements of the body of the speech. And in our body of our speech, the first thing that's going to go in are what are our main points. And all main points are the claims that you're making. So I'm going to make claims in my speech that there's 3 causes of global warming. The first is greenhouse gases, the second is deforestation, and the third is industrialization. So those are my 3 main points and the claims I'm making. But now I've got to back up those claims and support those claims with some evidence, and that's what's in my subpoints of my speech. So basically what my subpoints contain is the reasons that my main points are true. So I'm going to give statistics, I'm going to give expert testimony, I'm going to give examples, I'm going to give stories that support my main points or my claims. Finally, in the body, you're going to show transitions from the introduction to main point 1 to main point 2, main point 3 to main point 4, and then main point 4 into the conclusion of your speech. And transitions are words such as first, next, finally. Now that I've talked about this, I'll move to this. Now that you understand this, you'll understand this better. So they're just words that help the audience know that you're moving from point to point or from introduction to conclusion within your speech. And then fourth and finally, in the elements of the body, you're going to make sure that you have your verbal citations written into that body. And those will be your citation of the sources or evidence that we talked about under citing your sources. So there's some guidelines that you should use in putting together your main points. So first of all, you want to make sure that your main points go in a logical order. For example, if you were giving an informative speech on making chocolate chip cookies, there's certain order that your steps should go in. For our speech on global warming, it really doesn't matter. There's no one logical order that our speech should be given in. We might put things in a certain order if maybe some information built on other information for the speech, but lots of times in informative speeches, the order is basically what feels right to you as the speaker and how you think your audience will best accept the information. Lots of times in speeches, I see information on one topic and another main point, and the information is just kind of thrown on the piece of paper. You need to make sure that each main point, the information that point, talks about whatever the claim is. It doesn't talk about something outside of the claim. It only talks about information that supports the claim you're making. And then you want them to be separate and distinct. So each main point should be clear and organized. Then you want to make sure that you balance the time that you spend on each main point. So you don't want to have like one point that you just make like 2 sentences about at the end. You want it to be kind of divided between your 2 to 4 main points that you have. And then you want to make sure that you support each of the main points properly. So now we've completed the body of our speech. We want to talk about the elements of the conclusion. The first thing you should do in the conclusion is indicate that you're bringing the speech to a close, and that's called the break light. So it could be something like, in conclusion, it can be something like, now that we've covered the 3 causes of global warming, now that we've created this wonderful chocolate chip cookie, it's a break light. It's some kind of statement that says, my speech is getting ready to end. So that's the first element of the conclusion. The second element is a summary of your main points in the speech. And the summary is just really short. You don't have to go over all the information in the speech, but it could say something like, so now that you understand the causes of global warming, greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrialization, I've basically given a summary. So once you've done your summary of main points, you're going to add on the clincher in your conclusion. And basically, this is just the final statement that wraps up the speech. So in my case, in my speech on greenhouse gases, my conclusion is going to be very short. It's actually going to be 1 sentence. So I'm going to say my break light, which is, now that you know more about the causes of global warming, greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrialization, you can be more sensitive to these day-to-day issues in your life. So that's my clincher, right? I finished my speech. So your actual speech conclusion can be really short, and these elements can be included all in 1 statement, or maybe 2 statements, 3 statements at the most. So what are some ways to close your speech? You could use a quotation. You could go back to the beginning of your speech. You can thank your audience, but I want you to do a little more than thank your audience. You can pose a challenging question. So think the next time that you drink that bottle of water, right? Or you can refer to subsequent events. Some things that you want to avoid in the conclusion. You don't want to just end your speech. You don't want to just go to your main points and end. You want to have a tone in your voice that says you're ended. Don't just stop kind of in the middle of a sentence relative to your vocal. Make sure that you sound like you ended. Then you don't want to provide a detailed play-by-play of the whole speech in your conclusion. And you don't want to introduce new information and start talking about a whole nother topic in the conclusion of your speech. Just like in your introduction, there's certain things that you shouldn't do in the conclusion. Please do not end your speech by looking at the audience and saying, "That's it, that's all," or any other variation of that phrase. If your audience doesn't realize that you've ended the speech, then simply go and sit down. You don't really have to say anything. So once you have created what's going to be in your speech, you're going to create an outline. And that outline is going to have a number of different elements. You can actually look at the handout called the speech outline structure that will give you all the information you need to complete the outline. The outline should be in full sentences. It should be in MLA format. It should include a works cited. There are also a number of elements that you need to include in the body of the outline. So the body of the outline should clearly show the introduction and the body and conclusion of the speech. It should also label all the elements of the introduction and all the elements of the conclusion. So that means that you're going to label the attention getter, the SAT, the credibility, the thesis, and the preview statement. You're also going to label your break light, your summary statement, and your clincher. You're also going to make sure that you have transitions in that written outline, and you're going to label your transitions in the outline. You're also going to make sure that you fully write out your verbal citations. So not just the information, but you also show where you got that information from as you would say it in your speech.